Well, good morning. I'm Anne Lotter. I'm the Chief Executive of the Global Travel and Tourism Partnership. And we're involved in educating young people, primarily aged 16 to 19, to encourage and enhance their interest in joining the sector.
And tell me, just how hard is that as a job right now?
It's very challenging. Young people have been turned away from the industry in large numbers. Gen Z in particular, they have very values-based interests in where they're going to work. And if the employees' values aren't matching, then they'll turn away. I think there's an image issue with the sector generally, and we really need to look at how we can address that.
And give me a bit more sort of a perspective of how that variance is across the world. So take, for example, Jamaica, think about that versus other countries in the Caribbean, versus the UK and sort of established markets, perhaps like the US. Is it across the board, or are there particular kind of nuances?
Well, certainly the research we've done recently shows that it is across the board. People right across the world are suffering from a lack of people coming to the sector. The Irish Times recently published something suggesting 90% of businesses were struggling to find enough staff. I mean, that is a huge problem. And we know from the World Travel and Tourism Council's publication that the industry is due to grow by 3.5% per annum. So not only have we got a shortage now, but the shortage is going to increase if we don't address directly this issue right now.
And what do we need to do to address it?
I think we need to work with our industry. We need to look at how industry are employing people and what the issues that they are coming up against. Low pay is an issue that I've come across a lot, right across the board. I think conditions of work, flexible hours, career paths, these are all things that students are telling me are the reasons they're turning away from joining the sector. So there needs to be a collaboration between industry and education to ensure we can build on that and make sure we are offering the right kind of package to young people to attract them to join.
And are you seeing evidence of industry responding to this challenge?
Yes, certainly some of the global organisations are looking at more flexible working hours and how they can incorporate women back into the service. Post-COVID, a lot of people left and went to work independently elsewhere. Women in particular found it difficult to reintegrate into travel and tourism, partly because of family issues. They realised they would like to spend time with their families at home, and we know the sector, the employability variables are very high. And so addressing those sorts of issues, so allowing women, for example, to work during the week, working hours, rather than out of hours and weekends, is a way we can do it. But lots of the larger organisations are definitely looking at that and how they can attract staff. And I think it's about that collaboration. It's about sharing that knowledge with smaller, more independent and smaller travel and tourism businesses who don't have the resources and the ability to adapt and change and recognise the issue as easily.
And that's raised a really good point there. So, as an employer, you're thinking about your margins are being squeezed already. You've got all sorts of kind of new economic kind of pressures. You're still recovering from the pandemic. What do you say to people who are thinking about the fact that they just can't sort of afford to kind of invest in their people or invest in making these changes?
Yeah, that's a very good question. There was an interesting conversation we had the other day here at the Tourism Resilience Council about how industry can utilise remote working, for example. And so a remote worker might not be a full-time employee of that industry sector, but they could be working for them on a part-time basis or on an hourly basis, however it's structured. And there are certain areas that can be covered by that. Sales and marketing is one. I think technology is another, where they're not necessarily becoming direct employees, but they're providing a service to the sector. And I think it's looking at ways where industry can work more flexibly and be a little bit more creative perhaps in the way they employ their staff around certain sectors of what they do.
And you mentioned Gen Zennials already. Obviously we have the Alphas coming on sort of pretty soon after them. What do we need to think about when it comes to education itself?
Career paths are something that I know are very important to young people coming into the sector. I think we need to professionalise the training in the industry, and we need to look at how we can really show direct career paths. You know, it's a very complex industry to work in, and a young person coming in is bombarded with this information, and how do we channel their interest into the area that they really want to be going into, and how do we offer a clear career path for them? And I think that's an important factor that the education sector needs to address.
And are we seeing travel, tourism, hospitality being baked into curriculum?
Slowly. It's a little bit of a drip feed. It's very diverse globally. So, for example, the Global Travel and Tourism Partnership, their curricula is embedded into the national curriculum at high school in South Africa, and that's been a huge success to really embed that. Other parts of the world where the education systems are structured differently, it's not so easy or accessible. Jamaica is a good example where it hasn't historically been in high school. So a student turns up at university or tertiary education with absolutely no knowledge of the sector at all. I think that does need addressing as well. We really need to encourage young people to get an interest in it much earlier when they're making those decisions about their future and their careers.
Thank you for your brilliant insight today.
My pleasure, thank you.